Hi everybody and welcome to this epic episode of the Being Politely Rebellious in Pompey video podcast. Today we are joined by the absolutely incredible Matt Foster, who is founder and CEO at the Parenting Network, originally known as the Dads Club. Please join us in hearing all about his journey and his story into the third sector.
You can have bad people who do good things and good people who do bad things.
100%, yeah.
And your experience of the same person could be totally different to my experience. And we both have to value and validate each other's experience of that person. I'm going through a journey at the moment of piecing things together. And I could have this conversation with you next week and there would be things that I would remember or say or reveal that I did. It's all bits coming together, bits that I'm suddenly realising now while I'm going on this journey of healing and remembering things and certain bits of things, you know, about, I saw that and I now know why I was like that as a child, and I remember these moments and things. The Bridge Hub in the Fratton Bridge Shopping Centre, which effectively it is a family hub in the city centre that is super accessible. It's a collaboration of services coming together, and the diversity that we're seeing in there is fantastic. You know, we're reaching demographics of families that other support services in the city just are not seeing.
That's great.
It's fantastic. They're choosing. We're definitely the people's choice of family support now.
Hi everybody and welcome to this week's episode of the Being Politely Rebellious in Pompey video podcast. Today we are joined by the absolutely incredible Matt Foster. Welcome! He is founder and absolute serial entrepreneur here in Pompey, and we're really lucky to have him come along and share his journey. How are you doing today, Matt? All right?
Yeah, really good. Excited to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, I appreciate it. We're really excited to cement your story in history and learn more about you. So you're actually Pompey born and bred, aren't you?
Yeah. Not too far from where we are here today, actually. So my early years were spent in Portsmouth.
Oh, wowza.
Yeah.
Did you go to school up that way?
Yep, although the school doesn't exist there anymore, they've since knocked that down.
Was that King Richard's?
It was King Richard's, yeah.
What is it called now?
So they've got
It's an academy,
Victory.
isn't it, right?
They've got Victory, which I think might be Victory Academy, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And then there's Beacon View further along. There's like 2 or 3 schools, I think, now.
Yeah. So did you knock around up there, like in your teenage years, or did you knock around down in town?
By the time I was sort of in my sort of teenager years, it was more town.
Yeah.
So it seemed to be where the more action was
happening. Yeah. Get the bus down to the top of Mackie D's and.
Yeah, and then just kind of all round Southsea or something, sort of Albert Road kind of area. Really, it was kind of more my where my tribe kind of were.
Yeah,
really.
I love that. What did early life look like for you? Were you like mum and dad in the house? Like, who were your early influences, I guess?
So I grew up feeling quite privileged, and until recently I would have told you I was quite privileged.
Yeah.
But actually for me, growing up in the 80s, I grew up without my birth dad being there, so I've never known my birth dad.
So you never met him do you know his name, or?
I know his name,
Have you ever tried to find him, or not interested?
I haven't, no. And largely because I kind of, growing up, I felt like it was his responsibility.
Absolutely. As it.
Yeah.
Rightly so.
And then sort of my sort of adult life then became to sort of take over in other aspects.
Yeah.
And so it never really became a thing. And also I was never really sure at that point how that would affect other people around me if I sort of made those connections.
Right, okay, so like your relationship maybe with your mum.
With my mum, yeah.
And I think once you have children and things like that and you get married, you then wonder how it would affect the happy little world that you've created.
Absolutely.
As well, right?
And there was always this sort of fear of if they've gone on and had a new family, you know, and all of a sudden I ring the doorbell and it's like, hi everyone. I'm the brother you didn't know about, and I'm going to upset your inheritance. You know?
Usually case 101, right?
Yeah. I grew up without a birth father.
Yeah.
And
did you have like a stepdad or a
I
mum?
did. So it was a difficult relationship
Yeah.
with stepdad. So started off, my early years felt quite nice. I felt like I had that kind of father figure there.
Yeah.
But he was a deeply flawed person.
Right.
And I don't want to be unfair because he recently died.
Okay.
And there's an inquest going on at the moment.
Oh,
but
wow.
but for me, yeah, it's really difficult because for my family he was a great person.
Yeah.
But my experience with him wasn't
great. Yeah.
And I was pushed.
You can kind of end up in that situation where it's like your word against other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who's right, who's wrong.
And both can be true.
Absolutely.
You know, you can have bad people who do good things and good people who do bad things.
100%. Yeah.
And your experience of the same person could be totally different to my experience. And we both have to value and validate each other's experience of that person.
And I think that's where it can be difficult actually with absent fathers. So, you know, I can relate in the sense that, you know, my dad has, I think maybe like 5 or 6 kids by like various different women, and we've all had different experiences of him as a father figure. And then the same with my mum, like, you know, she's got 4 kids, 4 different guys, and you know, there's one child who, you know, gravitates towards her and the rest don't. So we all have those different experiences.
But yeah, no, and it became very evident once the family grew and children were sort of with my mum. I was the outsider.
Yeah.
And I was kind of pushed out very quickly.
How old were you when you moved out?
So I started disengaging probably in my sort of mid to late teens, I would say.
Yeah.
The problem was at that point was I was already being made to feel unwelcome, and any time that I was seen to be disobedient, I was actually a really quiet, introverted kid who spent most of his time in his room.
Right.
But if I was ever out of line, the response was to kick me out of the home. And I would normally go to a family member. Yeah. But sometimes that wasn't possible. And there were times when I would have been in my teens, walking the streets, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever, or I would come home and find the doors were locked, I wasn't allowed in.
Yeah.
And so I was already being pushed away, and so the first opportunity I got, I was in college at the time, to move in with some friends.
Yeah.
I took it.
Yeah.
What that actually meant was I was then, from a very sort of too young age really, I was only just barely old enough to be out on my own really. I was struggling with life and on my own.
Of course.
And it was a hard life. It was a really hard life.
A lot of responsibility, but then I think that's, you know, it's not just learning how to pay your bills and how to work and how to look after yourself from that perspective. It's also dealing with how you feel emotionally at that moment in time, but then trying to manage the emotions that have led up to that point, right? It's tough. It's tough. Do you find it hard to talk about it?
Yeah. I mean, so I'm going through a journey at the moment of piecing things together, and I could have this conversation with you next week, and there would be things that I would remember or say or reveal that it's all bits coming together, bits that I'm suddenly realising now while I'm going on this journey of healing and remembering things, and certain bits of things, you know, about, oh, I saw that and I now know why I was like that as a child, and I remember these moments and things, and
how it all kind of
and those feelings of suddenly realising, you know, in order, I mentioned earlier on about obviously being kicked out was always seemed to be the answer, the discipline, you know, and being the one that had to, even though I was in the right and I was a child, so I had to knock the door, and I had to beg and say I was sorry, and that I had made the mistake in order to be let in, and that was in order to get a roof over my head.
And that can stay with you, right? That can remain with you. And I think even when you get to a point in adult life where, you know, I know we both own our own homes now, and that's a beautiful, you know, thing that we've managed to achieve. But there's always that deep-rooted subconscious fear that it's going to be taken away from you somehow. And I think sometimes that's what perpetuates the overachieving and the overworking. And
obviously we'll go more into it later. But it's informed the way that I parent now, and so the fact that my children know that their home is always their base.
Yes.
They will always be able to come back there. If they ever need a stopgap, and I'll talk about a bit later on during a mental breakdown that I had, how I tried to go back home and how that spectacularly failed. But yeah, I wasn't able to do that in my 20s. You know, when I'd been living on my own for a while, I'd been trying to make life happen. Yeah, you know, you hit that hurdle. Yeah, you know, life collapses.
Support, right?
And it wasn't there. Yeah. So my children know that they will always have their bedroom. Yeah. They will always have this house. They can always come back. And so I've, you know, part of the reason, and I'll explain more later, the parenting network exists because of the promise that I made to my daughter when she was born some 13 years ago, holding her on my arms, and it sounds a bit cliche, making promises to her that I was going to be the dad that I never got. Yeah. You know, I had this absent birth father. I had a stepdad who sort of tried for a time, but then very quickly, once I wasn't falling in line with his worldview, his way of things, and his life, I was very much cast aside. Yeah. So again, I was sort of let down again by male world, rejected. Yeah. My grandfather died very young, so I never ever had that role model from that male role model.
So you've chosen to be this formidable, wonderful role model that you are, and not just for your daughter, but for the city as well. And you know, I know you do that in your work, and we see you doing that in your work today, but that isn't where that journey started, right? You started your journey of, you know, working and giving back to the next generation many years before Dad's club of parenting.
Whilst becoming a parent set me on this kind of social entrepreneurship and creating these community projects. Before that, there's a good 15 to 20 years of working in the third sector, focusing on youth work and homelessness.
And was that a conscious decision, or did it happen by accident or by chance?
So at the time, I thought it was a conscious decision. I always, when I was sort of in my 20s, because I started working in youth work. Yeah. And it just so happened I met somebody on a bus who was doing youth work. Right. And they said, "Oh, well, they're recruiting right now. Yeah. You should apply." And it ended up I was employed by the very youth workers who I used to see as a kid. Yeah. And I still see them today. I won't name them.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Later in life, I know I gravitated to that now because they were the appropriate adults in my life. Yeah. So that answered a lot of questions to me. So it started by what I thought was chance, but actually obviously it wasn't. Yeah. So I enjoyed that and sort of went through the youth work sort of side of things. And the way I kind of fell into the homelessness work it was a saving grace in a way for me. So what happened was connections had come along and took a lot of the funding away from the youth service. Yeah. And I lost a lot of my hours. And I was probably sort of experiencing some mild depression around that, struggling a little bit, lost where I was living. I was renting a flat at the time and moved in with my partner and her family. And that caused a massive strain, and she quite rightly decided to end the relationship as well. Cheers, baby. So I found myself no fixed abode. Yeah. I found myself struggling on probably at that point 10 to 15 hours a week. Not enough to really kind of get yourself back into a flat or anything. You know, so my hours are literally halved. Yeah, and I was feeling a bit of a failure at that point, really. But it was also a deep blow, because at that time I was also seeing, for the very first time in my life, I was in my 20s at this point, what a positive home environment was as well. And I was seeing her dad, who took me under his wing a lot as well. And so when that relationship broke up, I lost that too.
So it's like happening all over again, isn't it? Like for different reasons and different people, but again, it's that rejection, it's that left out on your own again.
And I spiraled, completely spiraled. My mental health took an absolute dive. Loads of intrusive thoughts. I'm shit, I'm crap, I'm rubbish. No thoughts to end my life. But
feeling hopelessness.
There was feelings of hopelessness, and it's kind of like the thoughts were, it's not really going to make much of an impact if I did suddenly have an accident or something like that, and I find myself walking the streets, going from sofa to sofa for a while, and I mentioned earlier on about trying to go back home. So at that point, the despair, I tried to return home.
It got that bad that you were willing to...
Absolutely. And nothing had changed. And the minute I got in there, it was that again. So it wasn't the support or anything that I was looking for. So I found myself kind of going back to being no fixed abode again, because it was better than that.
But then that complicates everything, doesn't it? Because then when you're of no fixed abode, even just sorting out finances and
you've got no address or anything,
work, it just complicates.
So everything. It was hard. And I was obviously looking for work. And so I found myself on, this was in 2004 now, so October in fact, so not too that long ago really in terms of where we are now in the year. But October 2004, I found myself still really in the grips of really, sort of poor mental health. And I was also engaging in some sort of risk-taking behaviours and things. And
as you do.
As you do, you don't value yourself, so you put yourself in situations.
I know you're quite open about the fact that you have ADHD. Is that something that you were aware of at that time?
No, not at all.
No.
That's actually only this year.
I
saw an inspirational speaker, and I'll mention him in a moment, who really pieced together some bits for me. But going back to the homelessness, so I found myself at the exact same time having a referral to live in a homeless hostel, but I also submitted a job application for the same homeless hostel. So I was really at a crossroads, and my life was going to go one way or the other. Having spent a long career, because obviously, no surprise, I got the job, but my life would have been so different, my outcomes would have been so different, life would have been so much harder, and I would have been entrenched in this system that doesn't make it easy to get out of it.
100%. So at that point, were you, so you got the job, which is great, well done, as you said yourself, kind of expect nothing less. Were you then not able to live there as well as working there? So did you have to find alternative accommodation?
So my life for that first month continued to be a bit hickety-pickety all over the place.
A bit surfing.
And the minute that first paycheck came in, that was a deposit on a flat. I took the first one I looked at, first one I thought it was rubbish, it was shit.
We've all been there.
Landlords do better.
I know. No heating, no hot water.
But it was a place, it was mine, it was something, and I could go back to it, I could close that door, I could lock it. I didn't stay there for very long, but it gave me that bit for a moment. And for a brief time, my life was on track. I found employment, I had a stable place to live, and I had a rewarding job.
And are we talking places like the foyer and things like that?
Well, that came later. So this was a homeless hostel in Fareham at the time. But what I found myself in this situation was and they say sometimes, don't they, that narcissistic personalities can sense somebody when they're vulnerable. So what I didn't know when I took this job was that the manager that was there was an interim manager. And so they hired me, we got on really great. And the first sort of 6 months were fantastic. But what I then didn't realise was that another manager was returning after long-term sick leave. and I'm sorry, complete prick.
There's always the one.
Yeah, you know, and he was an absolute bully and an arsehole, and set me back in my recovery.
Yeah, that's,
you know,
that's a shame.
Workplace bullying. It was my first experience of that, and
that's a real shame, because you were at a time in your life where actually, if the right person had have come along, it could have propelled you even quicker.
Absolutely.
You were at a point in your life where you were probably so open to a role model and somebody that was willing to take you under their wings and kind of show you the way.
Absolutely, and I mean, you think in that type of work that people are in there because
that
they want
person
to.
still work in the sector?
Not in that sector.
No.
So eventually, I think the heat got too much for them.
Yeah.
And they had to go.
Okay, rightly so.
But they are still in the area, still working in other similar sort of things. The problem we get is a lot of people who go through these services feel, quite understandably, feel that they want to give back. They want to work within that industry. But sometimes those people haven't done the work
themselves,
and they're not the right people to do that.
Absolutely.
And I see it a lot, particularly now, having worked supporting men for 10 years. You get a lot of men who go through this mental health journey, and they'll do an online course, and then they think they're the best person then at that point to help other men. But they're spouting this real toxic alpha masculine shit that's doing more harmful than good.
And I think it's people understanding that, you know, whether it's trauma that you've experienced as a child or as an early adult or even in your adult life, it's an ongoing journey. You know, you don't just do a course online and you're healed and recovered and all past traumas are forgotten. It's something that you're always having to kind of go back to and try to understand just that little bit more kind of year on year.
And when you've got these professionals that are out there and they're spouting out these TikToks now, and this is the problem, is when you can just click up a phone and you can instantly broadcast to people without thinking about what you're about to say. And you're saying to people, the past is the past, put it all behind you, that kind of mindset, move forwards. What you're actually doing is you're not acknowledging those feelings and you've got to validate them. You've got to work through it. And I promise you, if anyone out there is giving those messages, if anyone's listening to those, all you're doing is delaying the downfall, because those problems will manifest like they did for me when I became a dad and all those rejections suddenly bubbled up. You are just delaying the inevitable.
Yeah, exactly. That age-old thing, I've been told this a couple of times, in the corporate world actually, more so than anywhere else, but get over it. You know, that saying absolutely grinds my gears. Get over it. No.
Don't get over it. Deal with it. Tackle it. Own it.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if we're talking about childhood trauma or we're talking about an issue that might have happened in the workplace with a colleague or something. You don't just get over it.
No.
You need to communicate, you need to feel the feels and move in a certain way that feels right and comfortable, right?
We have to talk about these things. You know, the growth comes from the awkwardness of it.
Absolutely.
And men definitely talking to you. We need to definitely talk about these things. And we can't, as allies around men, or any person for that matter, we can't be worried about walking on eggshells or mentioning trauma or depression or suicide. You know, we have to have that curiosity to ask those questions and ask it again and again, because we all follow that script, don't we, where we go, how are you? Oh, I'm alright, that's good.
Nice story. Weather's nice.
I don't give a fuck what you really think, I know you don't want me to open up, but actually we have to be genuine, we have to be authentic, we have to say, actually, how has your morning been? You have to. And you go, actually, it's not been that great.
And sometimes it's the people that, you know, for anybody, man, woman or whatever, like, it's those people that always say, yeah, I'm fine, yeah, all's good. They're the ones that actually need you to just prod them and push them, and take that mask off. So this lived experience, so you've got tons of lived experience, you know, more than anyone as an outsider would ever imagine, to be fair, and your work experience coupled together is what propelled you to start Dad's Club.
So for a while I thought eventually, you know, the workplace environment settled. I was finding my tribe. I found a new friendship circle. And so things were starting to go my way. And I moved from working in Fareham into Portsmouth. I met my current partner, and we've had children together. And I was working in the foyer, which was a great time. Working in the foyer, which was supported accommodation for under 25s, it was very chaotic.
Yeah.
And I dealt with just about every situation you could ever imagine. It was some of the best years of my life. But it was, and I still see some of those youngsters today, because they were young kids when I was working with them, and now they're parents. So I'm still supporting a lot of those people. And it's so fantastic. But what happened was, as I said, my daughter was born 13 years ago, and all those feelings came back. My partner had an amazing pregnancy, but then after the birth, she herself suffered depression. She was struggling with the breastfeeding, so I ended up having to do a lot of that. And I was quite a nurturing. Not the breastfeeding, of course. Although men do produce that hormone. They do.
They can lactate.
Yeah, so the chemical releases in there. So we don't lactate as such, but the hormone is there.
Wow.
And so we kind of, those levels in men, it changes in men. So that's one of the reasons why we do the whole skin to skin for dads now. So that we do get the imprint and we build that and things and stuff. So whilst we don't go through the pregnancy and the labour and everything, it's now proven that we do change.
I think that, like you mentioned there, obviously your partner was going through, her personal struggles, and I guess what we lead into the fact that, a lot of the time, especially 13 years ago, and I think that we're starting to become more aware of this now, I'd like to think, in Comes Dad's Club, but men kind of get left behind, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
And forgotten, and it's all about the mum.
So I found myself in a situation whereby I was looking after my partner. I had this baby girl, and the responsibility for that felt so heavy. Enormous, and some of the conversations I've had with dads since, it's that moment when they're the most vulnerable, when the permanency sets in. There's all this, I've got this stuff beforehand, I'm gonna, then it's there, and you're realising, okay, well, actually, how secure is my job, and all those kind of things.
How
and
secure
the
is my relationship?
Absolutely.
I think that's when a lot of couples, parents tend to argue, and they either kind of get through that, or they don't.
I see it all the time. And I won't go so much into it now, but the biggest thing that comes up to me when I talk to mums or dads, it's that equity in the house, and that men's intuition, or lack of. I get the men coming to me saying, I just don't know what it is, these things don't enter my head. And then I get the mums coming to me saying,
he just doesn't think.
No, that washing's been on that stair, he's not taking it up, he's walked past it 4 times. It's a thing, it's a genuine thing. But so I found myself handling all these things, looking after my partner, having this baby, working as well. I just took the standard paternity, which we all know is really, really weak. 2 weeks is ridiculous.
Is it still 2 weeks?
Still 2 weeks. There's a lot.
I think you can share, can't you?
So you can do the
split.
You can do shared parental leave, which only 2% of the workforce take up.
God.
So it's rubbish. Keir Starmer do better. There are some brilliant campaigns going on at the moment that will the movement started with a brilliant podcaster and influencer, Pregnant Then Screwed.
Yes.
And she's lent herself to do a lot of stuff with dads and men, and they took a lot of men's support groups. Dad's Club wasn't one of them. Next time.
Do better.
Do better. They went up to Parliament, and they got to speak, and so I think that's going to be debated a lot more. So there's some talk there about what men can do, but obviously back, you said 13 years ago, none of that was happening. There was no support out there for dads. I would tell the health visitor, I think my wife has depression. That was ignored. Not once was I asked how I was. Not once. By midwife, by health visitor,
That's
nothing.
Crazy, isn't it?
And it's one of the things I preach to when I'm in the training, because I train health visitors and things on that now and stuff. Always ask everyone. You got the family unit, everyone together.
Because if one's dropping down a bit, then it destroys the whole dynamic, right?
So I found myself middle of the night doing the feeding, she's finding her lungs, it's stressful. Word to the wise, you can always put baby down, you can come back 5 minutes later.
Yeah, all will be okay.
Yeah, it's very stressful, we know it. But at that point, while I was also going through that, all those emotions and feelings of, I didn't have this. I didn't have a dad to do this for me. And I was making those promises, okay, I'm always going to be here for you. I'm going to tell you every day that I love you. When you're older, I'm going to spend at least 15-20 minutes a day doing something that you choose, you know, because everything I had to do had to be what he wanted. And I was making all these promises, and it was just a personal thing. I wasn't going to do anything with that other than fulfilling those promises. But what happened was I started to communicate that to other dads and realizing that some of those fears, thoughts and things were shared. And also some years later, when my boy was born, some of those issues with the professional services were still there. Nothing had changed.
What's the gap between your daughter and your son? 5 years. Yeah, you'd expect to see something, wouldn't you?
You would. And so the conversations kind of progressed, and at some point along those lines, somebody said something along, and this isn't verbatim, I never say anything verbatim because my memory is rubbish. But somebody said, and I think it may have been Samin, so Samin, thank you if you're out there. He said to me something along the lines of, you're quite good with social media and tech, maybe you should start a Facebook group. And I didn't, I ignored it. But for some reason, 6 months later, this epiphany moment went in my head, and I remembered that, and I just did it.
Actually, I should.
Yeah, and I just did it.
Shop all the latest now at politelyrebellious.co.uk.
And within days, there were hundreds and hundreds of member requests for this group. So I knew I was onto something, and Southsea Mummy and Babies group kind of latched onto it as well, and all the mums there grabbed on it and told all their partners, and then that sort of got the attention of other family support organisations, and I became the token spokesperson for the dads. So I'd go in and would be that for a while, and then that put me into the room with certain people who were decision makers within the council. And then Dad's Club became a bit legitimate. It gained some funding, and for a few years I was professional dad. And was able to share that.
So it started off with like a club, so where dads could come, hang out, talk,
go for coffees, that kind of things. We eventually sort of progressed that to then having some space in the family hubs. So we created a stay and play group where we could go with our kids. And that was all kind of the start of it, really. There was a Lego group we did for dads and their families as well.
And then how did that spiral into the absolute beast that it is today?
The behemoth that is the parenting network.
You now employ, is it 28 people?
Yeah, so we're a team of 50.
You've got volunteers as well.
About 28 on the payroll.
Yeah, which is incredible.
Spread across 3 cities. So
all within Hampshire?
Yeah.
So what is it, Portsmouth?
Portsmouth, Southampton and the Isle of Wight.
Amazing.
So the way it kind of worked was the seed funding that I was given from the council was coming to an end. And obviously I wasn't just going to say, well, that was a good couple of years. I'll go back to being a support worker now.
Sure.
As great as that was. So I was applying for funding, and the National Lottery were great.
Really?
You know, they took me under their wing, they helped me through it all. They knew straight away that this wasn't something that I was familiar with. And so I was really supported in applying for that. They actually upped the amount of money that I was asking for.
Wow.
They said, actually, we think this is a 3-year bid with this amount of money.
And were you expected to write those bids yourself? Oh wow.
Yes, I had to do a lot of that, but they would help. They would say, I think you should tweak this. You haven't said about how you do this, or an example would be, how have you spoken to other men about what this group would have, and things like that. So the consultation.
And I suppose that actually helps you as an entrepreneur and as a business owner to, I guess, just think about your ideas, right, and the kind of programs and projects that you want to run
Absolutely.
and manage and
and what you can't, and I still see this today, where organisations, they'll chase a pot of money and then create the project, and then they sit there coming to me saying, Matt, we've had to postpone it for this week, no one's coming, it's not working. And the reason is because they haven't identified the problem and then gone on and found the solution. There's or the funding.
More to it.
You can't just build it and they will come.
Yeah.
You have to do it in partnership. You have to empower people to be part of it.
Kind of like strategic. There's a lot more strategy behind it and a lot more, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't just have a great idea and think everyone's going to love that. They bloody well won't.
It must be really stressful though, because obviously with the third sector, you know, yes, you might win a bid from the National Lottery that will cover you for 3 years. You mentioned something from the local authority, Portsmouth City Council, which tied you over for a couple of years, but then it's that constant. You're not selling a product, right? So it's that constant having to find money.
Yeah, so there's no trade in what we do because everything we do is for free.
Yeah.
So we've had to diversify.
Yeah.
But the reason we became the parenting network was so initially there was this idea in my head that whilst I was working with these under 25-year-olds who were becoming parents, whilst they were in the foyer, there was a service for some of those, but it was a very strict criteria for if you were a teen parent, if you would get that support from the Family Nurse Partnership. Great service, absolutely great. If you can get it,
right.
And I come away and I'd meet these young people out while I was doing Dad's Club, say, how are you doing at the foyer? Oh yeah, I'm not there anymore. I'm a mum now, I'm a dad now. Oh, are you working with the Family Nurse Partnership? No, I couldn't get in. And so there was this niggling thing that support worker on my shoulder saying,
they need to be supported.
That's got to be a universal offering, surely. So when I went for the lottery funding, I put in for another project. But obviously that's not Dad's Club.
Yeah.
So the parenting network was born.
Oh wow.
And so going into lockdown, it was just Dad's Club and Young Mums Club.
Right.
With a team of 4. And then we came out of lockdown.
Where the need, I imagine, was...
There was still great need.
Great. Probably even more so, right?
But our growth has been...
exponential.
So we've gone from 4 people and 2 projects in 1 location.
Yeah.
To now with the 28 staff, team of 50, 3 cities, and 3 bespoke, purpose-built venues for ourselves.
That's insane. And do you feel secure?
Never.
No,
never feel secure. As you touched on just now, that you're constantly having to
chase where the funding's coming from.
Exactly, and it changes, and priorities change, and funders don't want to keep funding the same thing.
Yeah. How
things become vogue as well.
Yeah, like what's on trend. How do you feel the recent elections and obviously therefore the new government, Labour coming in, do you think, having now seen what their kind of budgets are, blah, 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 do you see it being a positive thing for the parenting network or?
Not really at the moment.
No.
So I was full of optimism.
Yeah.
Obviously traditionally the Labour government have been very kind to the third sector, and there is still time
and hope.
There is, but you know, with things like the rise in employers' national insurance and the living wage, now I understand that's great for my staff.
Yeah, but as an employer,
it's really difficult, and that raises, and it's hard when you have put in a bid to a trust to run a project, and you do allow a little bit of movement in those things. But when you suddenly got your staff struggling to live because of the cost of living and all those kind of things going on, and then national insurance goes up and you've then got to pay more salaries and things, and you haven't factored in for that, it's hard. We manage, you know, we it eats into the overheads and where the growth is really. But all charities are finding that really hard. I've sat around many round tables and all the charities are experiencing
the same
dilemma at the moment.
Tell us about your new venue. Is it the Forge?
The Forge, yeah. So obviously we've already got the Bridge Hub in the Fratton Bridge Shopping Centre, which effectively it is a family hub in the city centre that is super accessible. It's a collaboration of services coming together.
Amazing.
And the diversity that we're seeing in there is fantastic.
Well done.
You know, we're reaching demographics of families that other support services in the city just are
Haven't
not
been
seeing.
able to. That's great.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
They're choosing. We're definitely the people's choice
Yeah.
for family support now.
And do you think that stems from the fact that you, at the top there, have that lived experience and that down to earth person, and then you've, I'm assuming, kind of funneled that down.
Everyone in
into
my
the people
team
that you
are
employ?
just like me. They all come. I mean, you'll have to get April on your podcast
Yes,
at some
I
point.
saw her podcast recently, actually, that she does.
An amazing story to tell.
Yeah.
And we are just many within our team. You know, so we all come from that way, but we also, it's all about relational working as well. We don't, you know, we're not led by volunteers as well. So all of our staff are paid staff. They are accountable to run their projects. They have lots of freedom to run it that way. They've got their own lived experiences.
Yeah.
We allow some entrepreneurialism within that. We encourage all of that.
Yeah.
So they produce this growth. They have this relationship with the families that come to our services that is unparalleled anywhere else. And those families tell other families, and the outcomes that we do. And we get families coming to us saying, oh, well, I've gone to here and they said they were going to help me, but it's 2 weeks ago, and and then we're able to say, let's do that then.
now.
And by the time they've left, we've sorted it out.
Do you actually find yourself as a charity in a situation more often than not where you're overwhelmed?
Always,
Like,
yeah. The demand for us is greater than what we can give.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But that's why we've got the hub there.
Yeah.
And we've engaged a lovely lady called Hannah, who is our community engagement worker. She's there full time. So people can make appointments, they can come, they can get that support and that help, and it works beautifully. So we've got a full-time program of groups, activities going on in the hub where families can come and get involved. We've got Hannah there who is creating this triage service, and it works beautifully also alongside our next door venue, Portsmouth Baby Bank.
Yeah.
So between our services this year, those two services and our work in the family hubs, we're in the family hubs too. So we do school readiness programs, young mums, we do the dads groups, we do antenatal baby massage, starting solids. There's so much that we do, as well as universal stay in place. We've actually supported 11,500 families this year.
Oh, that's so incredible.
We've given 5,500 child meals out,
Wow.
and the baby bank helps 140 families a month.
Do you pat yourself on the back?
No, not really.
You
The work is to a point, you're just constantly
It's
busy.
funny
but,
actually, because recently I know that you've just had your annual men's International Men's Awards, right? And, I wasn't able to come along, but thank you so much for the invite. I left for holiday that day actually, but I always look at that as an outsider and, you know, put in the odd nomination and then see the people that win the awards, and I'm like, right, when's Matt going to get his MBE or OBE or whatever, you know? It's incoming soon, surely.
I mean, it would be nice.
It would be,
nice.
yeah.
It's
That's
not
what I'll speak to April about. Because I think you have to be nominated, right? It's not like they come and pick you. You have to. Your name has to be put forward, I believe.
Several people, I think.
Right.
That's what I don't know.
Project for 2025.
I mean, to be honest, if I'm really honest, the only reason I would kind of be, I mean, acknowledgement is nice, but I'd actually be thinking, how does this help TPN? How does this help the families?
I get that, and that's why
but-
I'm saying it, because I think that you're absolutely incredible, and the work that you do and continue to do, you know, you're relentless with it. You're like, let's go,
It's
let's
life work
do
now.
it. Absolutely, it's that. But just take a moment to just acknowledge how amazing you are.
we do.
No, not we. You! This podcast is about you. You're amazing.
Okay, yes.
You're amazing.
Yes, I am amazing. So,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks for indulging that. You are.
But you asked about the Forge, and you mentioned the men's event. So,
so the Forge is your new space, right? And you
yes.
held the men's event there this year.
we
didn't
did.
You? Mm-hmm.
So
how was it?
It was fantastic. We packed people in.
Yeah.
I was a bit naughty.
Yeah.
I can't say no to people when they say they want to
Yeah.
come, because we've gone from trying to kind of corral people into these things.
Yeah, to then suddenly it's a thing.
Because people go, well, that's a bit patriarchal.
It's on trend now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, bit of a gentleman's thing, is it?
Yeah, but they have the international, they have the women's awards, so why not?
Ronnie, and they do fantastic. We take a bit of a different tone with the men's event, and so we're great supporters of the women's event, and the women's event also support us as well. So we it very instantly, the minute I wanted to do the men's thing, we spoke about allyship and working together, and fantastic stuff. And
how do you choose the winners? What's the process? Do you have like a panel?
Yeah, there's a panel
that go through.
There's a panel. So and we had 80 nominations.
Wow.
So they all come in, very simple Google form. It's really, really stressful at first because, as with all these things you'd expect, you're having this imposter syndrome and this failure syndrome, and you're thinking, mate, it's been going for a couple of weeks and I've had like 11 nominations. And you think, well, this is going to be egg on my face, a bit embarrassing. What am I going to do here? Or you've got the same person and they've been nominated like 7 times. Or
keep the faith. Keep the faith.
And then all of a sudden you get to like the last week and it's bam, 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 bam.
It's sometimes the general public, it's that thing of you've only got 7 days left to vote, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh yeah, we're meaning to do that for like a month.
And also the thing is like with and this is serious now. So the problem is that men issues are only trendy in November.
Yeah.
When it's International Men's Day, Movember, all those kind of things, and so people jump on that, and then it's forgotten about.
Yeah.
So when I'm so for instance, not to discourage anyone, but the women's event, they start that very early on, and there's this good tribe around it.
Yeah.
The cheerleaders are there. They get some pre-events going on. That falls on its face if you try to do that for men.
It does.
Men do not garnish the same sort, and I know why. Historically, patriarchy and the women's rights within the workplace and pay gaps, absolutely, men have come from a place of privilege, and I acknowledge my privilege, and we all as men should acknowledge our privilege. If you are a white male in this country, you may not feel it, but you are coming from a place of privilege, and so I acknowledge that, and all men should, but it's all part of the same argument. Whilst we're arguing for better pay for women, better opportunities, more representation in places of leadership and decision making, we also need to be acknowledging the health issues for men, the suicide rates for men, men's right to parent out loud in the workplace and take leave. We have to bound together in that.
I feel like there's this element of in getting other ethnicities and other genders levelling up, we're kind of pushing down those that have been seen as privileged for all these years. Whereas really we need to just appreciate and understand and accept that we want everyone to be on a level playing field.
We've got to get that equity there. And what I'm seeing now, and this is only my observations and conversations that I've had with men, so please don't crucify me. It's what I've termed male guilt. Now, so I'll get men coming to me saying, I almost kind of feel guilty for being a male, and it's not like it was my choice that I've gone to school, done work, try hard, and try to do everything that I can. Yet I'm feeling like I'm criticised for, being
me.
But I personally don't feel any hatred or discriminating thoughts against anybody.
And then once you're in that mindset, the pressure that puts on you, where's the solution? Because there is no solution, right? And this is why it then perpetuates into these really high suicide rates and issues that we face now in society.
This is why like I said earlier on, we can't shy away from those conversations. Men need to be able to say, I feel like this, without being jumped on and saying, patriarchy, this.
Totally agree.
We have to bring men along on that journey, and we have to do it together.
100%.
Men have got a lot of work to do. But they can't be trodden on at the same time
and be left on their own kind of thing. What would you say the future holds for Matt Foster and your wonderful organisations?
So for the time being, so just to quickly answer the question about the Forge. So we did the men's event at the Forge. Very, very important for us to do that, because whilst we would normally do it in a bigger venue, the Forge is actually going to become a support centre for men.
Right.
So this event has a legacy. It's not just a talking shop where November passes, we're in December, and now we're all talking about Alpha on the shelf. What this actually is we're creating this legacy. So the Forge is going to become a place where it's not a men's club or anything like that. It is a safe space for men to come, not just dads, men, and other support agencies that are out there have or will be invited. So people like Man Mind, Andy's Man Club, all those similar sort of organisations, they can utilise that space. It will have a very grown-up feel. It will have a coffee bar and things like that in there, and so and the idea is when you're looking at, for instance, times gone by, men might go down the pub and have a pint while playing a game of pool, and they would normally open up. We're providing a healthier version of that. So you can't have alcohol. We're not going to give you alcohol. But there's a pool table. You can have a coffee, and you're more likely to open up.
Amazing.
And what it is we're also bringing like veteran services and things. So men are we're all complex, but men have got these complex issues. So you can be a dad, but you can also be a veteran. So you'll be able to talk to Tom Burgess, amazing guy from Save a Warrior, about your struggling with PTSD, but at the same time you're a dad, so you can talk to my dad's club worker Harry at the same time, and you get this wraparound service that does not exist anywhere.
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah. So
that's crazy.
What TPN is doing, you ask about the future, is we're breaking through the roof now, and we are the leaders in what we do now.
Amazing.
When it comes to family support, we're the leaders. When it comes to supporting you with childhood support, April, in our Embrace programme, we're the leaders. We're being sought out by NHS, clinical services, statutory services, government services, talking to us. When it comes to parent voice, we've got a new project coming up, we're going to be leading in that. We're already the largest support group for dads on the South Coast. The baby bank is the busiest outside of London. You know, so the work is there, it's growing, it's developing. We're already talking to the Isle of Wight. We've got our dad's club on the Isle of Wight, but we're talking to the Isle of Wight now about taking some of our other services over there and opening up a venue over there as well. So we're growing, we're developing, and it's snowballing. We've got Jo, she'll kill me if I don't mention her. So Jo Morgan is our head of corporate partnerships.
Amazing.
So you ask about our funding and things, so we're now looking to say, actually, we've all got a responsibility behind this, and businesses do. And so Jo is going to be forging those connections, forging those partnerships now between us as a third sector organisation, between those businesses, and making those opportunities for both of us. So there's going to be a lot of that going on.
What do you do to like, you know, keep yourself sane in amongst all of this snowballing? What do you do to kind of like switch off or chill out and you know, try and forget about your job just for a moment?
So this is where we get a bit real. For me, if we were to be cards on table, really honest now, and I think it's the writing's on the wall for everyone to see, really what TPN is my response to trauma. And instead of going to therapy, I threw myself into this. It's kind of like, well, I'll show you, arseholes. You know? So my hobby and my life and my work,
kind of blended into
they're
one,
all
right?
together. That doesn't mean that I don't do things. Obviously, I haven't lost track of my family in all of this, because that would be an absolute betrayal that they were the catalyst for this change, and I lose them on this journey. So obviously I still am very committed to spending time with my family, with our dog, with my kids, home with them, doing things with them. We're going to the Panto on Monday. So, you know, we do all of those kind of things. Balance. So my family is that. But then as when I spoke to you previously, you know, music is a thing for me. I'm not musical, I'm not talented, I'm not going down that way. But listening to music, don't ever ask me to do karaoke if you want to clear a room. I'll clear your bar at the end of the night. But so cooking dinner or DIY paint in the bathroom or something while I've got my headphones in. I'm very eclectic with my tastes.
Yeah.
Everything from 50s soul right up to punk rock, everything in between. Obviously it's all Christmas songs at the moment.
But Christmas.
Have not encountered Fairy Tale in New York yet.
No.
So
Is that a band?
I have no idea.
I thought that it not banned, but I thought it got cancelled in some way, shape or form.
Oh, I wouldn't surprise me. Maybe.
Matt, let's take it down a notch.
Go for it.
Seeing as we're on to talking about you in a more personal manner, first and foremost, please enlighten me with the most politely rebellious thing you have ever done.
The most politely rebellious thing I have ever done. Okay, so there was a support organisation not too far from where we're based here in Portsmouth, who initially I took the idea of Dad's Club to, saying I'd like to volunteer, I'd like to start this dad's group, I'd like the support to do it. I was basically accused of being sexist. I was putting men on a pedestal. I was made to belittled in front of an entire office full of people.
Wow.
And so I went away saying, sod you, I'm not just going to start a dad's group, I'm going to make it the best in the country.
Yeah.
And I did.
Yeah, you did. You did
and
that.
you could have had that.
Yeah.
But you didn't. And
well done, you.
yeah. But also just choosing to thrive in the face of
adversity. And
yeah,
I love that. I love that. Give me a high five. Now, theme park or zoo? Quick fire questions. No right or wrong answer.
My kids would kill me. I enjoy a zoo, but I'm going to go theme park because they love theme parks,
really?
And it's a family thing.
What's the go-to? Which is like the favourite family theme park?
They love Chesington.
Oh yeah, I do love Chesington, and for the mixed ages, mixed genders, it works, doesn't it?
Yeah, we tend to go Polton's more because it's closer.
Yeah.
But yeah, every few years it might be Chesington.
You been to Legoland?
No, I haven't. Only because your prices are ridiculous.
They are. They are.
It's not family friendly.
No, they are ludicrous. Candles or incense?
Incense, because candles are a fire hazard.
They are. Incense won't set your house on fire. And are you a fan more of birthdays or Christmas?
Christmas.
Yeah, why is that?
Because you can share it.
Aww.
Birthdays are, I mean, for instance, my 40th was spent in lockdown.
Yeah.
So, birthdays, they're nice. And, but I've never had that crowd around me to make birthdays special. Obviously, make my kids' birthdays special. But Christmas is just, it's so much more of it. It's not just one day and good things happen.
What's your favourite family tradition that you've created as a family man?
Our favourite family tradition would be our walk that we do on New Year's Day along the seafront. That actually started with me deciding that that's how I was going to propose to my wife. And I thought, it's New Year's Day, it's going to be really quiet. It's the busiest I've ever seen it. And this was actually after a massive storm. Do you remember when all the stones had washed up over the road and into Kenny Lake and all that kind of stuff? The bandstand was flooded, and I had this romantic idea that I had this ring in my pocket, and I was going to do it by Garrison. I was going to go into the Garrison Church. But they had all this building site and scaffolding. And I was like, well, that's that stuff. And they wanted to go home at this point because they were cold and miserable, and we'd done lots of walking. And I was like, no. I said, well, let's go to Southsea Castle and have a hot chocolate. And I'm just desperately trying to keep this on because I'm going to do this today. I'll flip and do it. And ended up doing it at Southsea Castle.
Oh, I love that. When did you get married?
So we're not yet married. It's been a very long engagement. So TPN has kind of, because she was also in TPN. She's the baby band manager.
Oh, wow.
And so we've just really been busy. So we've never really been able, and we don't pay ourselves a lot as well. We don't do this for the money. And
maybe elope. Elope and just do it
maybe.
the fun way without all the drama.
Absolutely. So it's been a very long engagement, but the time will
committed
come.
and happy, and in your little world, which is
in our bubble.
important. Yeah. And what would you say is your all-time favourite song? If you could only ever listen to one on repeat over and over, what would you choose?
all-time favourite song. God.
It's a hard one, isn't
Yeah,
it?
last time we spoke, it was just kind of like, what's your favourite song of the now? Which would be probably something like Fleetwood Mac now. So I'm so impartial to a lot of things, and I change a lot. But I couldn't pick a song. But my favourite singer of all time, Sam Cooke.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
a lot of soul music.
Yeah. Because he's quite modern, isn't he?
No. Sam Cooke is.
Someone else.
You are.
Oh, yeah.
So Sam Cooke is kind of like from the 40s and the 50s, and on a time of like sort of very kind of 40s, 50s song.
Yeah, I can imagine the songwriting's quite epic on that.
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out.
Originated a lot of the popular people like you would have got since will be doing covers of those types of songs.
I'm going to go hunt that out and see it's fly after this. And dogs or cats, Matt?
Dog.
Oh, really?
Absolutely dog.
You got a dog?
Got a dog, yep.
Name?
Flynn.
Yeah.
We think he's a Cavapoo, but we're not so sure. We think there's definitely some Cava in there, I
How
think.
old is
but
he?
He's a year old.
Oh,
yeah, he's a year
puppy.
old. He's dopey as anything.
Is he your
He's
first
not
family
listening.
dog?
He is, yeah.
Oh.
So we've had a rabbit and a hamster before, not quite the same.
Yeah, no, of course not. But you kind of build yourself up.
Yeah,
slowly, right?
absolutely. And I always said we'd never get a dog until we were able to give it the life that it deserves and wasn't left alone for too long. And when the hamster died, because the kids were really into this hamster, they handled it so well. And my boy is also he's got autism, and I had been kind of like no, but then it was my idea, and it was very kind of like right. It was at Christmas time. It was just after Christmas. I said, right, let's go and get a dog. We're going to get a dog. Because, I wanted, first of all, I wanted my boy to have this connection with dogs. Quite often, people who are neurodivergent, they form this affinity there. Although it's a really hectic relationship they have.
Yeah, but it's cool, magical and beautiful, right?
And Evelyn has this really nurturing relationship with the dog.
So it works well.
I do nothing, but I'm his best friend.
That's always the way, they say.
Everyone loves
Still the master.
They're like, everyone's just like, why, Dad?
Yeah.
I'll go and sit down. He comes to me.
Yeah.
I think it's because I give the best hugs.
Yeah.
I
think it says a lot about your aura, right?
I hope so.
I hope so. All the times that I've met you, you just have like such a wonderful aura.
Thank you.
That open, just. I can imagine if somebody came to you and said, I really need £5 and it was your last £5, you'd give them it. Do you know what I mean? Like you've just got that.
I don't carry cash, but yeah.
Do you take card?
They come out with a point of sale. So.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'd always, if people choose to come to you in that point, and I don't know what form my help would take, so please don't all come to me for money, because I do not have money.
Yeah.
But if someone comes to you for help, and you turn them away, that could be the point where they don't engage anymore with anything. And this is what we're aware of down at the Bridge Centre. When those families, quite often, particularly at the moment with the cost of living and issues and the climate that we're in and things, a lot of families are finding themselves in situations where they've not had to engage with services at all, so they don't have a clue. And they walk past and they see Parenting Network written across the thing, and they think this might be a place of help. And so for us, that welcome, that first introduction is really, really important, because what we've done is we've mixed hospitality with third sector, and we've brought all that together now, and it doesn't feel like charity. And so
the new age, Matt, the new age.
Absolutely, and we're just all in it together.
Long may it continue.
I hope so.
And I think that we're so privileged to have you in Portsmouth, and you choosing, to, despite the memories that are maybe not so positive, to have remained here and stood by the city. And I really hope that this city continues to stand by you.
I hope so too.
Thank you so much for coming in.
No, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you.